Welcome to the end of the week, party people, and you know what that means? It is time for another Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Each week we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic servers. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and this is a show where it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic goes through your expert input on everything relating to the sure-to-be amazing World of Warcraft Classic. So, what do we have in store today? Well, we'll be going through a deep dive into the lore of the Barrens, with that Countdown to Classic panache that you've come to expect of the show. But also included with that is a very special piece of Countdown to Classic original entertainment as we debut a very special call in Law & Order Mankrik's Wife Unit with listener Riv, an in-real-life homicide detective from a major top 10 town in the US and an avid Vanilla WoW fan who is kind enough to put up with my antics and help me solve the mystery of who really killed Mankrik's wife. So please do stay tuned for that bit of fun. You'll also hear regular segments, That's What We Said, Anger Management, and Tidbits as well. Just a quick note before we get into it though, if you haven't seen yet, John Statz, the former World of Warcraft developer who I interviewed in episode number 63 of the show, launched his Kickstarter for his book all about the making of WoW on August 28th, and it has absolutely gone bananas. I couldn't be happier for John, as after just a couple of days, it's already absolutely smashed its $10,000 goal and is currently sitting at around about $220,000 worth of orders for what is an amazing book, judging by the preview that I was lucky enough to read through. I just want to voice a huge congratulations to John. I know he's continuing his publicity tour for the project, and I wish him nothing but the best going forward. If you haven't found John's Kickstarter page yet and ordered the book, then I highly recommend that you find your way there by simply Googling the World of Warcraft Diary Kickstarter, and you have it come up right away there in Google, and I know that I have my copy ordered already, and I can't wait to devour it. I really recommend you check it out. Now, speaking of support of projects, if you're enjoying the in-depth conversations like the one that we had with John and the content that Countdown to Classic brings you on a regular basis, then please head on over to the show's Patreon page and see how you can help support Countdown to Classic to continue to bring you more interviews just like that one. All the links you'll need are in the show notes for each episode. If you want to hit me up with some feedback or submit a memory lane or anger management of your own, you can always hit me up at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com as well. Also, please do join the show's amazing Discord. The link again is in the show notes. And if for some reason you can't get enough of me, then please do check out my other podcast, The Cinephiles. That's SINNERFILES.com. If you haven't already, for some great comedic takes on all your favorite movies. We just covered The Departed this week, and I urge you to have a listen to that one for a really good laugh. But with all that said, let's get into the lore of the Barrens with a scoop of vanilla. The Barrens is a large zone in central Kalimdor controlled mostly by the Horde. It is a massive savanna with a few oases in the north-central region around the crossroads. Before the upheaval, several large Kaldorei cities stood here. Now, those brave few willing to scrape out a life on the arid plains inevitably run afoul of centaur warbands or quillbore raiding parties. Despite its often uninviting terrain and hostile inhabitants, the Barrens receive a good deal of interest from Alliance and Horde alike, as well as races native to Kalimdor. Trade routes crisscross the landscape leading to and from more inviting regions, and the most notable route is the Gold Road that runs north to south through the Barrens and beyond. Rumours suggest that precious minerals and treasure-filled ruins await those with the courage to investigate. So that's the Barrens in a bit of a nutshell, a bit of a quick synopsis. But what about that landscape and the history behind the area? Well, let's get into it, and if I say anything that you feel overlaps into expansion content, then I do apologize and just let me know. But I think for the most part we're okay. It's always just a bit tough going through what was pre and post Cataclysm in particular. But here we go. I think we'll be all good. The Barrens was once a thriving forest under the protection of the Night Elves and their kind. Several Kaldorei settlements dotted the land, and there was no ocean for miles. Then came the Burning Legion and the Great Sundering, which shook ancient Kalimdor to the bedrock. This forested landscape transformed into a scorched plain, and is battered now each day by the sun's rays. The Barrens is a sprawling and arid savanna that stretches between the Stone Talon Mountains to the west and Durotar to the east. The grasslands and mesas of Mulgore rise to the southwest, while the wetlands of Dustwallow Marsh lie to the southeast. The majority of the region consists of vast plains. Mountains to the west hold in heated air, creating the swirling winds that rage across the plains. These windstorms stir up dust devils and tear apart anything larger than the small tenacious scrub trees. Water is more valuable than gold in the Barrens, and the locations of hidden watering holes are the residents' most closely held secrets. Dry riverbeds and a never-ending spiderweb of canyons make any journey across the Barrens a dangerous and winding trek. Centaur warbands are most often seen in the Barrens canyons, though they roam as far as the river that forms its eastern border with Durotar. Fearlessly aggressive, the Centaur are known for their savagery, especially against Tauren and Night Elves. They're not above attacking trade caravans also, for the goods or just for the sake of violence. Travellers who survive the Centaur's battle lust are used as slave labour in the hard-scrabble mines the Centaurs carve into the hard-baked earth. Displaced from Durotar by orcs, Quilboar have built crude villages along the river that separates the Orc nation from the Barrens. From there, they strike out across the river to raid settlements or deeper into the Barrens to attack caravans along the Gold Road. The caravan raids have hurt the Goblin trade prince's profits, so they've started negotiations to pay the Quilboar gold and goods to protect caravans against Centaur warbands. The Quilboar have also erected a fortress called Razorfen Downs in the southeastern Barrens. Razorfen is a sprawling mass of giant twisting thorns and crude mud huts. It serves as the centre of Quilboar society. Other dangers include harpies, who watch from perches atop mesas in the northern Barrens, and large beasts such as lions and thunder lizards, though those creatures tend to avoid the Gold Road. Native dangers have not stopped the Ironforge dwarves from establishing a stronghold near the Titan excavation site of Baal Modan. The Centaur have made forays against it, but are repelled decisively each time. Scouts claim that the Centaur are amassing other tribes to launch a major attack, but the dwarves are unconcerned. Each day that passes sees Baal Modan grow stronger as the inhabitants build up its defences. As just mentioned, Baal Modan is a dwarven base in the southern Barrens, consisting of a fortress with a giant cannon and an excavation site for digging. Before the dwarves came, the area was home to the Stonespire Tauren. There's an ancient Titan complex and research facility under Baal Modan. It seems likely that there are many relics and much knowledge to be discovered deep beneath the surface. The Baal Modan dig site is led by General Twinbraid, Hagen Stonewhisker, Prospector Kazgorm, Malgan Barleybrew, Captain Gerog Hammertoe, and Lord Cyric Blackforge. A number of dwarves from Baal Modan travelled west to Mulgore and set up another dig site known as Baal Dun dig site. Prospector Kazgorm and those under his command used explosives to blast holes in the ground despite the protests of the Tauren who were living there. Eventually, Kazgorm ordered his soldiers to attack the Tauren and drive them away so the dwarves could have the land to themselves. During the rout, many of the Tauren were killed by the dwarves. Gan Stonespire is one of the Tauren who escaped with his life. In addition to revenge on Kazgorm, he wanted the Prospector's journal, so at one point in the game, the Tauren sends horde adventurers out to kill Kazgorm. Kazgorm had uncovered a fossil and believed that it's part of a greater mystery, so he sent Henrig Lonebrow to find more fossils to piece together the story. What was that story, you might ask? Well, it gives a bit more background into the landscape of the Barrens and the Quilboar without tripping on the future episode all about Ravaged Crawl too much, but here's that tale. Henrig Lonebrow was a dwarf who travelled to Kalimdor and was ordered by Prospector Casgorm in Baal Madan to travel through the Barrens. Casgorm had uncovered a fossil which the site scholars believed to be a bone fragment of an ancient god, and Henrig was to discover more fossils to piece together the story. On the second day he travelled south through the vast and expansive lands of the Barrens. His long and arduous trek had yielded nothing of interest for the Explorers League archives. When he travelled along the Gold Road, he noticed some quilboars, from which he hid and let pass, leaving a foul stench behind. On the third day he came across a grand find, massive remains of what seems to have been a boar-like creature. Its skull towered many lengths above him, and each tooth of the beast could dwarf even a dwarf like him. Due to the sheer size of the find, he was led to believe they were remains of one of the rumoured old gods. He remembered a lecture given by chief archaeologist Grey Whisker, who mentioned of such a god, which was revered by the night elves of Darnassus. He got interrupted when he heard noises outside his tent, believing it was a boar trying to get his apples. He was wrong. On the fourth day, it was revealed that he had been captured by quilboars of the Razorfen tribe, believing they were taking him to the great boar remains of the fallen god. Instead, they skirted the great fossils and headed directly west of the giant skull, across the Gold Road. He was dragged into the Razorfen Crawl and thrown inside a crudely crafted hut, where he was held captive along with a dying night elf. His only possessions at the time were his journal, a pocket watch, and his quill. His last words on this part was that someone was approaching the hut. On the fifth day, he found that the night elf, who was a druid called Heralath, sent to these parts to examine the rumours of the fallen boar god, suffered from grave wounds from the repeated whipping from the quilboars, and was slipping in and out of consciousness. Henrig believed he would perish before a miracle rescue party would brave this treacherous place. The druid told Henrig that he believed the Great Boar Skull was the place where the great boar god Agamaggan fell battling the Burning Legion during the War of the Ancients, flattening the land and causing twisted spires of thorns growing where his blood fell. Heralath and the other night elves seek to discover the source of corruption of the crawl, believing it was a mystery that the foul creatures and malignant thorns scar the land, since Agamaggan was believed to be a pure god. Heralath slipped again into a fitful sleep before Henrig could press him on more information. On the sixth day, Heralath's condition was getting worse, looking as pale as bone, his fever growing worse by the minute. He could only open his eyes once that day, speaking with pained anguish, but giving a clear message. If Henrig would escape his doom in Razorfen Crawl, he would get word to Falfendel Waywater in Thalanar that Chalgar Razorflank was rousing minions in the southern Barrens, and that her power was growing with each day. While the quilboars were preparing outside for some great military action, he feared that if he didn't attempt his escape soon, he would meet a fate similar to Heralath's. He planned to sneak out when the quilboars left for their next hunt, believing it would be easy since the guards were lazy and often slept through their shifts. Once he was free from Razorfen Crawl, he would head towards the Thousand Needles and then west to Thalanar, at the border to Feralas, seeking the druid Falfendel Waywater. His journal ends with the realization that what began as an attempt to explore the past of his people had turned into something much larger. The protection of the Alliance was lying in his hands. It's unknown what happened to him after his journal ended, but he was probably killed during his escape, since his corpse can be found below the Great Lift in Thousand Needles. Now, with that said, just a very short catch-up from Warcraft 3 at this point. You'll remember that the story from Warcraft 3 for the Orcs up to their arrival at Kalimdor was the following. The young thrall awoke from a strange vision, directing him to the prophet Medivh. Medivh tells him to rally the orcs from Lordaeron and travel to Kalimdor, where they shall meet their destiny. He frees the orcs from the remaining internment camps, including Grom Hellscream. The Horde steals the human fleet from South Shore and sails off. Near the Maelstrom, they're forced to land on a small island to repair their ships. There, they're joined by the Darkspear Trolls, led by Sen'jin, but are soon ambushed and captured by a group of Murlocs worshipping a Naga sea witch. Thrall and his people need to escape from their underworld prison together with the Trolls and flee from the island before it's destroyed by an erupting volcano. Continuing to abide by the mysterious prophet's instructions, Thrall continues with the Horde across the Great Sea. After weeks of traversing the raging seas, the Orcish Horde landed upon the savage shores of Kalimdor. With their stolen ships broken and drowned, the Orcs cautiously ventured inland, wary of the unseen dangers lurking within the crags of the desolate land. And what was that desolate land that they arrived at? Well, it was the Barrens, I think, naturally. When the Orcs under the new war chief Thrall had landed on the Barrens, it saw civilization anew. Now, it's slightly disputed where they made landfall, and that's why I joke, I think, because whether or not it was actually in Durotar or the Barrens where the Horde landed on Kalimdor and was their sort of Plymouth Rock, there are actually arguments for both, but I do believe it to be the Barrens, so we'll move on anyway and not get too stuck in the mud on that point. The Horde built new settlements among the dry grasses and arid hills, and placed the Barrens solidly into the heart of Horde territory. Eventually, Thrall and the Horde came across Can Bloodhoof, the High Chieftain of the United Tribes of the Tauren. Can watched the young chieftain of the Orcish Horde battle and destroy a group of centaurs who had been attacking a Tauren, and he became intrigued with their nobility and savagery. When Thrall told him that they came to look for their destiny, Can directed him to the north, where there was an oracle. Thrall reported seeing an army of centaur going north, and Can quickly left to defend his village. Thrall brought his followers with him and followed Can to defend the village. After defending against wave after wave of centaur warriors, Can told Thrall of his plight, and Thrall vowed to protect the caravan of Tauren as they crossed the Barrens to Mulgore in exchange for the location of the oracle. A bunch of stuff happened outside of the Barrens from there, and a friendship was born, and the Tauren eventually became part of the fledgling Horde. As they also settled the surrounding land that came to be known as Durotar, the Horde set up numerous outposts in the Barrens, the largest being the crossroads at the intersection of two major roads, and Camp Torajo, or Torajo, however you like to say it, a Tauren outpost near the border to Mulgore. The Barrens are also dotted with numerous farms populated by Orcs and their families, and watchtowers manned by Orcish and Tauren guards. Razorfen Downs lies just opposite Razorfen Crawl in the southern area of the zone, but this dungeon has been infested by agents of the Scourge and poses great threat to anyone who's travelling to or from the Thousand Needles. The Barrens are a temperate and warm land. It has hot rugged hills, plains, grassland, some rocky desert and rugged mountains. The Barrens are huge and are one of the largest zones in the game. The land is mostly flat with a few hills scattered throughout. The climate is harsh and hot, but survivable due to several lush oases. With a stretch of coastline to the east, mountains to the northwest, plains to the west, forests to the north, marsh to the southeast, and the desert conditions to the south and northeast, the Barrens is surrounded by extremely varied landscapes. Due to the immense size of the zone, running from Morshan Rampart near Ashenvale to the Great Lift near Thousand Needles can be daunting even for players with mounts. The Barrens is also infamous as a very busy secondary zone shared by Tauren, Orcs and Trolls. Undead players also often come here between levels 10 to 25. With 3 instances and multiple travel hubs, it's a busy in-between area, traversed by higher level characters as well. This is a major contributing factor to the high volume of the chat in this region. The chat in the region has had the infamous tag of Barrens chat due to its sometimes frequent trend of players going completely off topic in discussions and delving into silliness, which annoys some players while amusing others. But we'll get to Barrens chat a little bit later on. So here's an idea. Instead of just describing the lay of the land to you, how about we jump on the Countdown to Classic tour bus again and I show you around the Barrens, point pointing out and giving a bit of information behind some of the sites you'll come across in your adventures here. Come on, all aboard everyone, here we go. Now, we'll start in the far northern part of the zone and we'll drive down the Gold Road and work our way south. So, on your left, you will see the Sludge Fen, an oil field in the northeast corner of the Barrens. Occupied by the venture company for their oil refining projects, the Fen is one of the oil platforms that can be visited in-game. This is a dangerous area to adventure in, as the cowardly venture company employees will rush for help if they're attacked. The Sludge Fen is led by Tinkerer Sniggles, Foreman Grills, and Engineer Whirligig. The venture company is the most notorious goblin organisation and a cartel, deforesting and plundering the world for its natural resources. It is a part of the Trade Coalition and operates in Mulgore, the Barrens and the Stone Talon Mountains regions of Kalimdor, as well as Stranglethorn Vale in the Eastern Kingdoms. Now, coming up on your right, you will spot the Crossroads, being the largest horde town in the Barrens, aptly named for the crossing of the main north-south road from the Gold Road and the road from Ratchet in the east all the way to the Stone Talon Mountains in the west. Combined with its central location and the Wyvern flight routes, the Crossroads offers access to nearly all horde outposts in Kalimdor. As such, this small crossing is usually the first place that you'll see large gatherings of players outside of Orgrimmar or Thunderbluff. In addition to the numerous Horde players that gather there, Crossroads attracts its fair share of Alliance players as well. Within striking distance of Ashenvale to the north and the port of Ratchet to the east, it's not uncommon to find an all-out war happening outside one of the entrances of Crossroads on a daily basis. Larger-scale Alliance assaults tend to occur during peak server population periods, that being between about 4 p.m. and around midnight. The area outside the inn also serves as an informal practice ground for PvP and offers a good place for lower-level Horde players to cut their teeth, as these are skills that they'll likely need when facing the Alliance in more sparsely populated remote regions later on. At the Crossroads, you'll meet NPC Sergra Darkthorn, who sends promising young adventurers to prove their worth to the Horde by hunting local wild creatures. The Crossroads Graveyard is considered the default graveyard for Horde players, much like the Sentinel Hill Graveyard for Alliance players. Just near the Crossroads, also on your right, you'll spot the Wailing Caverns. The Wailing Caverns is one of the first instance dungeons that lower-level Horde players encounter. One primary reason to venture into the Wailing Caverns is for bind-on pickup drops from the numerous bosses in the instance. Some of the quest rewards are also highly desirable. Even the poor quality drops are better than ordinary. A stack of typical trash drops is worth around 5 to 10 silver. And here's the description of the Wailing Caverns from Blizzard's official World Dungeon site. In years past, a Night Elf druid named Naralex discovered a network of underground caverns within the heart of the Barrens. Dubbed the Wailing Caverns, these natural caves were filled with steam fissures which produced long, mournful wails as they vented. Naralex believed he could use the cavern's underground springs to restore lushness and fertility to the Barrens, but to do so would require siphoning the energies of the fabled Emerald Dream. Once connected to the dream, however, the druid's vision somehow became a nightmare. Soon the Wailing Caverns began to change. The waters turned foul and the once docile creatures inside metamorphosed into vicious, deadly predators. It's said that Naralex himself still resides somewhere inside the heart of the labyrinth, trapped beyond the edges of the Emerald Dream. Even his former acolytes have been corrupted by their master's waking nightmare, transformed into the wicked druids of the Fang. And we'll get more on the Wailing Caverns in a future episode of Countdown to Classic. But for now, on your left, you will spot Ratchet. Now, we might get out here, everyone, because we'll take a bit of a wander through town as we're about to go through a nicely sized chunk of Ratchet history. So come on, mind your head. Okay, here we go. Ratchet is a major port in Kalimdor, a medium-sized harbour city located on Kalimdor's central east coast. It's run by the goblins, and it shows. Built from equal parts of industry and decadence, Ratchet sprawls along nearly a mile of coastline, where the eastern Barrens poke between Durotar and the Dustwallow Marsh to the sea. Ratchet is the pride of the goblins, a trade city where you can find almost anything your heart desires. It also has regular ferries that traverse the safe, though roundabout, routes to the island stronghold of Theramore to the south. The town does most of its business through Booty Bay and Barren Revelgaz on the other side of the Great Sea. Ratchet is a city where creatures who were once the butt of jokes now reign supreme. Its streets wander without rhyme or reason, sprawling in every direction, and the architecture shows no consistency or common vision. Ramshackle warehouses stand next to stately stone homes. Fine shops press cheek to jowl with rude huts. However, the neighbourhoods are dedicated to one activity, and one activity alone: commerce. Wares of every type imaginable, and some beyond the imagination, are on display in markets and in exclusive boutiques. Merchants throng the marketplaces each and every day, selling everything from silks to slaves. Everything in Ratchet has a price, of course. The city never stops. Its lights are on, its shops open, and its services available at any time of day or night. The Goblin Watchmen work around the clock and are quick to put down conflict amongst traders and make sure that the inhabitants all play nice with each other. Goblins welcome anyone with gold or items of value and a willingness to trade them for their wares and their services. Those with money can listen to skilled musicians while drinking fine ales and eat food prepared by expert chefs. For those with earthier tastes, the streets along the wharf teem with casinos, playhouses, fine restaurants, taverns, tea rooms, gladiatorial arenas, and brothels. Hello. Oh, no, thank you, madam. I'm quite all right.
What part of time is money, don't you understand?
I appreciate the offer, though. You are a fine-looking goblin, but I'm clearly giving a guided tour, and we absolutely have to keep moving now. No, you must be thinking of another Josh. I can assure you that you certainly don't know me or recognize me in any way. Righto, good day, ma'am. Call me later. Yes, moving quickly over this way, everyone. One could say that Ratchet truly has it all. Now, since goblins are essentially neutral to everyone, Ratchet entertains members of each race who come for the trade and nightlife. All in all, Ratchet is a wild place. From the grungiest sailor to the wealthiest royalty, all can sate their tastes in Ratchet. Ratchet is Kalimdor's largest port, and ships carrying loads of precious goods and cargo commonly stop here on their way elsewhere. Pirate vessels receive amnesty in Ratchet's waters, as long as they can pay the stiff docking fees. This brings an influx of the disreputable and violent. This situation makes many merchant captains furious, but they cannot hope to stay in business if they boycott Ratchet. Moreover, the lawkeepers and hired mercenaries prowling the waterfront as well as the bazaar are eager to deal with anyone looking to cause trouble. More than one drunken hooligan has laughed at being told to calm down by a pair of tiny goblin guardsmen, only to wake up in jail with bruises and singed clothing. Indeed, Ratchet is a hotspot, as races of all types and members of all socio-economic strata rub shoulders in the bazaars. Ratchet is currently run by Gazlo, the overseer of Ratchet of the Steamweedle cartel, under the watchful eye of the trade princes, who give him considerably free rein. Ratchet also serves as a base of operations for many members of the corporate group, the Venture Company. They also run the city and always keep their beady eyes on the bottom line at all times. Gazlo was formerly the chief engineer of the Horde engineering works in Durotar, and while he has no love for the Alliance, he has no real hate for them either. After all, their gold is as good as anyone else's. Gazlo retains strong relations with the Horde. This is further reinforced by one of his prized possessions, a quote-unquote liberated SI-7 spy cloak. After the Third War, Gazlo was contracted by Thrall to be Durotar's chief engineer. His task was to secure a reliable source of water for the newly constructed city of Orgrimmar. Gazlo's expedition dug tunnels outside the city in search of an underground well, where they accidentally tunneled into a den of kobolds, who immediately flooded into the caves and drove the goblin miners out. Gazlo sent the yet unproven Rexar into the Orgrimmar tunnels to protect sappers that would collapse the breaches into the kobold dens. When Rexar succeeded, Gazlo rewarded him with magical items. Thrall paid Gazlo and his workers well for their help in Orgrimmar's construction, so after the Orc capital was completed, the Goblin decided to establish Ratchet. He sent Reslak, one of his employees, to Durotar to continue helping the Orcs while he worked on Ratchet. In addition to commerce, Ratchet hosts a series of arenas that sponsor gladiatorial tournaments. These enormously popular tourneys are open to all comers, and winners can reap enormous prizes. The princes of the Golden Circle often hire those who distinguish themselves in the arenas, either as bodyguards or as caravan escorts. Interesting bit of history here. Several minor shipping incidents near Ratchet led to increased tensions between Orgrimmar and Theramore Isle. Ratchet served as a staging area for the Horde army against the forces of Northwatch Hold, which we'll touch on soon, but when the truth of the incidents came to light, being that the Burning Blade was playing the two sides against each other the whole time, the battle was declared over by Thrall. The majority of quests in Ratchet are only available to Horde players. Ratchet served as one of the faster ways that Alliance raid groups could reach Durotar or Mulgore to raid the Horde's capital cities. Ratchet is also home to a medium-sized coven of warlocks that offered a high number of warlock quests. Strahad Farsan, Minara Voidrender, and Baba Gaia Shadowcleft are members of this coven, along with their acolytes, residing in a tower above the city. Ratchet offers the following helpful amenities to players in-game: a bank, a cemetery, the town exit to Crossroads, cooking stoves inside the inn, equipment repair, a forge and anvil next to the bank, cemetery and weaponsmith, an inn with mailbox and stables, transport to Booty Bay via boat, the boat being the Maiden's Fancy, and since patch 1.11, a flight master. And now that we've wandered around and seen Ratchet, let's climb back on the bus, everyone, and continue the tour, ignoring the prostitute running after us, screaming that I owe her money. Fire it up, Eddie. Let's get out of here. Alrighty, so everyone, let's recommence this drive through the Barrens, and further down on our left you will spot Northwatch Hold, or Northwatch Keep. It is a massive Alliance fortress located between the Merchant Coast in the Southern Barrens and Dustwallow Marsh. While Northwatch itself is under siege, its men along with the various reinforcements of the Alliance are spread about Kalimdor, acting as the major force for humans in the war in Kalimdor, even going as far as setting up camps in the Orcs' home territory of Durotar. Its strategic location blocks the coastal approaches to Theramore from the north, forcing any Horde assault to travel south and navigate the marshes in order to reach Theramore Isle, and it is guarded by a large number of Theramore troops. The large naval base is known for its massive walls, gates, and its various facilities, such as an archery range, stables, a mage tower, a blacksmith, tents, and 2 scout towers at the top of the mountain which the fort is located upon. The eastern tower was formerly the home of Cannoneer Smythe, while Cannoneer Wesson resided in the western tower. There was also a captured High Elf, Gilthar's Firebow, chained to an iron ball in the central tower, seeking help and rescue by the hands of the Horde. At the top of this tower resided Captain Fairmount, leader of Northwatch Hold, who was also targeted by the Horde. The inhabitants of the naval fortress of Northwatch Hold are friendly towards the Alliance, but the area serves no purpose to them. The residents of the Hold are simply there to be killed by the Horde trying to claim the land, as well as a vengeful Captain Thalothas Brightsun for an attack on his ship. He hired Horde adventurers to kill Captain Fairmount and some of her crew. Northwatch Hold was where the Orcs fought Admiral Dalen Proudmoore. After his death, Theramore took over the stronghold and had served as an essential part of Theramore's defence. The Orcs of Durotar have long been apprehensive of this stronghold as it was so close to their borders. Now, you'll see another settlement coming up on your right, and that is Camp Torajo. Camp Torajo is a Tauren outpost situated in the southern Barrens near the mountain pass leading to Mulgore. It could be reached by starting Tauren players by following the road east from Bloodhoof Village. It had an inn, a few vendors, some profession trainers and a flight master. Tauren ran this camp and Jorn Skyseer led it. Jorn is a hunter who can be found at level 32 located in Vendetta Point in the southern Barrens as a quest giver. Jorn served as a guide and mentor to Horde adventurers as they trained in the wilds of the Barrens. It lay along the Gold Road south of the crossroads. The camp was concerned with defending against the encroaching Quillbore and often held captured Quillbore prisoners. And speaking of Quillbore, we now come to the last two stops of the tour, right across the road from each other essentially, right down the far southern end of this vast zone, and those are Razorfen Crawl and Razorfen Downs. But what's with all the Quillbore in the area in general? Well, the Quillbore settled within the Barrens and waged war against the other races living within the region, like the Tauren. This way of life would move forward without incident until the beginning of the Third War. The Horde would quickly make enemies of the Quillbore who attacked them on sight. Generally treating the Quillbore as a nuisance, the Horde fought them when provoked, but striking against the Quillbore was not a top priority. However, circumstances did force Rexxar and his companions to seemingly wipe out a group of them sometime after the Third War. The Quillbore tribes make their homes throughout Mulgore, Durotar and the Barrens and defend their territory while striking out against the Horde. While most tribes are independent, the Razorfen tribe have seemingly entered into an alliance with the Scourge, who have bolstered their forces with them and allowed Amnanar the Coldbringer to transform Razorfen Downs into a Scourge stronghold. But first, Razorfen Crawl, which is described over at the Old World Dungeon site as the following. 10,000 years ago, during the War of the Ancients, the mighty demigod Agamagan came forth to battle the Burning Legion. Though the colossal boar fell in combat, his actions helped save Azeroth from ruin. Yet over time, in the areas where his blood fell, massive thorn-ridden vines sprouted from the earth. The Quillbore, believed to be the mortal offspring of the mighty god, came to occupy these regions and hold them sacred. The heart of these thorn colonies was known as the Razorfen. The great mass of Razorfen Crawl was conquered by the old crone, Chalga Razorflank. Under her rule, the shamanistic Quillbore stage attacks on rival tribes as well as Horde villages. Some speculate that Chalga has even been negotiating with agents of the Scourge, aligning her unsuspecting tribe with the ranks of the undead for some insidious purpose. Then we have the aforementioned Razorfen Downs, which again over at the Old World Dungeon site was described as this. Crafted from the same mighty vines as Razorfen Crawl, Razorfen Downs is the traditional capital city of the Quillbore race. The sprawling, thorn-ridden labyrinth houses a veritable army of loyal Quillbore, as well as their high priests, the Death's Head tribe. Recently, however, a looming shadow has fallen over the crude den. Agents of the Undead Scourge, led by the leech Amnanar the Coldbringer, have taken control over the Quilboar race and turned the Maze of Thorns into a bastion of undead might. Now, the Quilboar fight a desperate battle to reclaim their beloved city before Amnanar spreads his control across the Barrens. And that's the end of the tour, everyone. So step off now. Come on, mind your head. Oops, sorry, ma'am, you left your axe behind. There you go. No worries. All right, let's get out of here. All right, everyone. Well, look, that's the geography and the lore of the Barrens. So what else can we find in the Barrens? Well, there's plenty of fun quests, but if we're talking about the Barrens, there really is one quest to rule them all, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Lost in Battle, aka Mankrik's wife. Mankrik is an orc who asks you to find his wife who fell in battle. Mankrik's wife is very far away from him, and he offers almost no directions to her location. There is also no NPC called Mankrik's wife, as she is called Beaten Corpse. This results in almost everyone accepting this quest resorting to asking for her location in Barrens general chat. This becomes extremely annoying as Horde characters spend large amounts of time in the Barrens, and hearing the same question repeated over and over and over again tends to drive the somewhat more experienced players a tad crazy. Repeated requests for the location of Mankrik's wife have resulted in responses that vary wildly in accuracy. Some place her quite close to her actual location, though such responses are probably given out of pity for the lost player, while others, depending on the prevailing mood, attempts to send players to far off, hard to reach, or often totally impossible to reach places, such as inside Blackrock Mountain, or next to Illidan's throne. Even the World of Warcraft's general database, Wowhead, has answered this question using location markers to spell out the word there and a giant arrow pointing at the location of the beaten corpse. On many realms, Mankrik's wife has also become a generic response to general chat questions involving quest givers, merchants, things like that. For example, player number 1, where do you train Shadowbolt? Player number 2, Mankrik's wife. But we'll get to more on Mankrik's wife in a very special call in today's Calling Countdown segment coming soon in this episode, so please do stay tuned for a bit of fun there. But for now, let's hear what the players had to say about the Barrens with That's What We Said. In That's What We Said, we tackle some of the players' comments about the area that we have just spoken about with the lore. So, let's start over at MMO Champion with user Erds, who says the following. For those of you who played in vanilla, you'll remember the randomness and often inappropriate commentary going on in Barrens chat, and either remember it fondly with a shudder or with an indifference like me. For those of you who weren't there, Barrens chat became a term for A, general chat in Barrens, but more importantly, B, random and sometimes offensive banter in the public general chat channel. It occurred because 1, Barrens was the largest zone from a leveling perspective. You had a large number of people in the same zone leveling from 10 to 30. 2, most players as low-level characters weren't yet in a guild, which meant their main chat option was general chat. And 3, many noob questions would invite trolling. Where is Mankrik's wife? Of course, providing amazing fodder for trolling. So, a few changes have occurred to the game since then around spam filtering, guild recruitment, and the ability to report players for inappropriate content. Should those chat-related changes be allowed to come across, or will the loss of Barrens chat be a big loss in the authentic classic WoW experience? Next we have this post from Alabaster Jones, again at MMO Champion, who says this. It's the same as everywhere else, really. A GM would always step in eventually if somebody went over the line for long enough. I remember people being frozen in Ironforge and physically launched or flying out of Orgrimmar for trolling trade. I wasn't lucky enough, unfortunately, to see a GM smack anybody down in the Barrens back in the day, though. Next we have this one from Death Knight 93 at Wowhead, who says this. Nothing but Chuck Norris, Mankrik's wife, and other nonsense that couldn't be found anywhere else. Ah, the good old days. Sad face. Next we have this one from Persimmon Phil over at Reddit, who says this. Fucking Tide Pods, lol. I remember Barrens chat being a little more about pointless banter instead of degenerates jacking off together. What happened to Chuck Norris? Shit is going to be interesting, but I will embrace Barrens chat once again when the day finally comes. Next, this one from user Cryptic Dota, again at Reddit, who says this. Old Barrens chat is definitely an improvement over new Barrens chat. When I leveled my shaman on K2, I'd hear someone say cuck or cucked once every 2 minutes. I'm convinced 90% of the edgy teenagers that played back in the day never grew out of their edgy phase and are currently playing private servers. Next we have this one from user Varsuvas, who says this over at Reddit. And this is a bit of a mock-up of a Barrens chat example, and it goes like this. Anyone here like Metallica? Metallica sucks and you're a noob. All metal bands suck. You guys are both gay. You just listen to rap crap and you think you're so cool. Hey, who likes Starburst? Losers like Starburst. I bet your mum's a loser. Guys, where's Mankrik's wife? I can't find her. Can you guys just shut up and play, please? K, thanks. LFG, WC, shut the fuck up. Shut up, player. No, they all like crap music. How much wood would Chuck Norris chuck if Chuck Norris could chuck wood? All of it. Hey everybody, new guild looking for members, all levels and classes, whisper me. Nobody cares about your guilds. LOL. Where do I learn Shadow Bolt? Mankrik's wife. Where is Mankrik's wife? Shut the fuck up, she's in my bedroom. And that's an example of the Barrens chat, so you can know what you can come to expect. But next we've got this one from user Gravelord Nito, who says this. Yep. Old chat was immature and sometimes funny. Modern chat is immature and insufferable because those same immature C words think that they know politics now and think everyone wants to hear it. I don't fucking want to hear about Sorrow's world domination schemes in a video game chat, you absolute shit. And finally, we have this one from user Baron MW over at Reddit again. The kids are the same. You just got older. Now, that was a whole bunch of posts that I just read out to you, and obviously there was a very common theme going on there, and that was Barrens chat. So why do we mention Barrens chat first when we discuss what the community's thoughts on the Barrens were? Well, it really is ironically the most memorable feature of the zone, despite being a feature that was far from implemented by Blizzard themselves. Gaming communities can latch on to obscure things as objects of their affection or hatred at the best of times. And a zone's chat channel would definitely seem to qualify as obscure. However, it did divide the community somewhat in terms of how you felt about it. Did you happily kill some time by engaging in a little bit of Barrens chat back in the day? Or are you one of those players who felt that it was one of the few negative aspects of World of Warcraft that displayed a lack of maturity and decency amongst the masses that played the game? I don't feel that I'm overly qualified to comment too much on Barrens chat as I played Alliance during vanilla and have only had minimal exposure to it since the vanilla days. But from what I've seen and heard, it was somewhat of the wild card of vanilla World of Warcraft. It could be somewhat harmless and fun at times and then could swing in entirely the other direction and become intolerable to the point that you just want to switch off. Racism, sexism, trolls, fighting, hate. On private servers right now, all of those things could be found on a semi-regular basis in Barrens chat. However, one can also find memes, fun jokes, banter, and assistance. It will be interesting to watch the evolvement of Barrens chat in World of Warcraft Classic, as it's a game that is expected to attract somewhat of an older and presumably by proxy a more mature player base. Time will tell if that maturity turns Barrens chat into a fun, nostalgic resurrection of Chuck Norris gags, Mankrik's wife references, and engaging chatter amongst those in the area, or if the evolution actually devolves into Trump chat, the N-word being thrown around with the so-called safety afforded by anonymity, flippant threats of sexual violence, and the kind of fights that lead to potential swatting situations. Am I being slightly hyperbolic? Yes. However, is it still within the realm of plausibility? Also, unfortunately, yes. But in my heart of hearts, I do hope the classic player base won't display the kind of behaviour that would prompt the GMs to be working overtime with the banhammer. And if you'll excuse me now, I'll just get down off this soapbox. Yep, okay, thanks for the help. All right, let's move on to the second point I want to bring up in That's What We Said. And that starts with the following. And I've forgotten this user's name, and I do apologise, but here we go. It sucked to be Horde in vanilla. One of the reasons why that was the Barrens and Hinterlands had to be finished via patch. The Horde was missing its Wildhammer counterpart, and as for the Barrens, a patch had to be added to fill the completely empty farms and towers just sort of standing around. The patch notes describe it as giving the Barrens more life. Next we have this one from user J2TheMellow over at Reddit, who says this. My favourite zone will always be the Barrens. I feel like as a Horde player, all of Kalimdor is tied into the Barrens where low levels go to grow from levels 12 to 20. This is when many of the classes learn those key skills that carry forward for the rest of their time playing. I still remember getting bear form and spending an egregious amount of time circling crossroads, killing and skinning Planestriders. Eventually, when I got cat form, I remember returning to do the same thing, in awe of how much more powerful I had become. Next we have this post from user Cinnamon Thief over at Reddit again, who says this. The Barrens. Even as Alliance, I miss the Barrens. It's weirdly designed, big and monotonous, but so much fun to explore, and I honestly love the landscape and colours. So, in talking about these posts about the Barrens, it's clear that they are showing a lot of love for the area. So are you one of those players that shared that love? Did you absolutely love the Barrens? I have seen around my travels through the forums that quite a few people do actually list the Barrens as their favourite zone in the game. Is that a sentiment that you might have as well? Was it amazing and potentially somewhat of the cradle of life for your WoW Classic nostalgia? And yes, as that obviously user points out before, the Barrens was actually changed a little bit in patch 1.6, and the patch note from when it dropped on the 12th of July in 2005 went as follows. The Barrens should now feel more alive. So the zone got basically fleshed out a little bit more, and people ultimately became happy with what it came to be. And it's one of those things with being a lower level zone. We talk about how the lower level zones tend to be remembered just a little bit more fondly by many players because, as we say, this is where we started our journey. Those first few steps through the teens, through the 20s, may well have happened for many players through the Barrens. And so it really does have a special place in people's hearts. Now, as I said, for me, I was an Alliance player, so I don't actually really have that much experience with the Barrens. I have absolutely trawled through them on private servers, but I don't quite think that that was the same thing. In vanilla, when we were all learning, nobody knew anything. It would have been, I have no doubt, an absolutely amazing and unique experience, which, you know, given Barrens chat on top of that, might have been a little bit of fun, a little bit of frustration, who knows, but ultimately the quests, the environment, it really sung out to a lot of people, and obviously you've got something like Mankrik's wife that just adds to the flavour of the zone. It makes it so goddamn memorable. But next we'll move on to this point, and we'll hear from user Bellavina over at the WoW official forums, who says this. Dear Blizzard, why did you decide to kill the Barrens as a crowded zone for low-level players? Crossroads used to be a massive PvP zone. Wailing Caverns was a place to brag if you knew your way around it and joined groups that looked for tanks, healers, or DPS. General chat provided unlimited amounts of entertainment while you quested. What do you think you did that caused players to stop going there? Was it the big gap in the middle of the Barrens that you can't cross unless you have a flying mount? Was it the extremely sad sad background music that you added after Camp Tarajo was destroyed by the Alliance? I'm not sure what it was that killed the Barrens. As a new player in 2005, Crossroads and the Barrens was the place to be for amazing fun. There were huge Alliance raids that came from Ashenvale, and most of them on foot because most people could not afford mounts, and then Horde players would push them back to Ashenvale and back and forth. It was still an amazing and fun place to be before the huge gap and sad background music was added. Is there any way to ever have the Barrens fixed? Looking at my t-shirt that says, "I survived the Barrens chat," kind of makes me sad. Would you please undo the bad changes? Next we have this one from user Delurk over again at the WoW official forums, who says this: "The Cataclysm changes were bad and we should get rid of the Corcron. Bam! Barrens, good as new. That easy." Next we have this one from user Thyrolid, who says this again at the WoW official forums: "I miss the old Barrens. I miss the old Thousand Needles, which was an awesome place to level skinning and mining, and I sorely miss the old Darkshore. I don't really enjoy the new quests, and I truly hate what they did to those zones. They just aren't fun to play in anymore." Now, the reason I bring up those posts is this. Obviously, the Barrens went through a vast amount of change after Cataclysm dropped, and people, as you've just heard, did not really like the changes that we got. The area was absolutely geographically torn apart with, as they say, a large tear or crack put down the middle, and some fundamental changes were made to areas within the zone that we heard about on the tour. So it really was one of those zones that got a vast touch-up, and this is part of the reason why we pine for World of Warcraft Classic so much. As we say, we're going back before all of these changes took place. And we talk about changes versus no changes, but obviously one of the changes that people actually pine for, even though a lot of people say no changes, one of the changes we want is to go back to the world as it was, because we don't like it as it is. And the only way to change it is to go back. I can't wait to see all of these areas as they were. And obviously some of you are enjoying them as they were on private servers. However, the official server obviously will open it up to everyone to be able to come back, have a good look around at what it used to be, and also give the experience to players who might not have had the chance to play vanilla to see things as they were. There are many players who are going to join up who, quite frankly, have not seen Thousand Needles before it was underwater. So I just think that that will be a really interesting perspective to hear from a number of people. But anyway, with all of that done, now it's time for anger management. In anger management, I read out some of the angriest posts that I've found in relation to the content that we have just discussed. And today, we're going to focus on Mankrik's wife, and I start with this one from user Kim343 over at Reddit, who says this: "Mankrik did it. He wanted the insurance money for that farm, so he burnt it to the fucking ground. But his wife found out, and as she was coming back from whatever it is that orcs do, he panicked. He fucking did her in, bro. Then he blamed it all on a battle with the Razormane and convinced a naive hero just starting out on their journey to kill enough of them for 60 tusks in the name of revenge. In truth, Mankrik wanted the Razormane dead so they could not deny his story. Mankrik never did remarry, and he lived well enough off the insurance money, and eventually came to terms with his guilt by finally burying his wife's corpse during the Cataclysm, by throwing it into the crevasse between North and South Barrens. He threw her body in that fiery conflagration." Next we have this one from user Fecal Matter at MMO Champion, who says this: "Before you ask where, ask how. Do you really believe Mankrik's wife just suddenly died in the Barrens, done in by simple quillbore? No. This is indeed a mystery, the likes of which we have never seen before. I present to you damning evidence about Mankrik's wife. Exhibit A, Mankrik. Mankrik seems perfectly healthy at his small hut in Crossroads. If you go to WoW Wiki, it points out that Mankrik could be part of the Burning Blade Coven and also a former Blade Master. Could this conspiracy become more bizarre? Exhibit B. The conspiracy becomes more bizarre. In Mankrik's first quest, he wants you to collect 60 tusks. Why does Mankrik need 60 tusks? What on earth can Mankrik do with 60 tusks? Perhaps he uses them in evil, ritualistic demon summonings. Where does he store them? Why he doesn't kill the Quillboar himself is unknown. He states it's too far for him to go, but sends you to get them for him. Perhaps this cult Blade Master is indeed a criminally insane demon summoning scum? Exhibit C, Lost in Battle, the actual quest. Mankrik gives no description whatsoever on the topic of his wife, nor the location. Who is the mysterious Tauren druid that rescued him? In the quest text, it states upon discovering the beaten corpse, you turn the body over and see the marks from blades and spells upon the deceased orc. Her armor all but destroyed, her hair matted to her face. Based on Mankrik's description of her, there is no doubt in your mind that this was his wife. Strange. Mankrik didn't give you any clue as to what she looked like, yet somehow you 100% know that this is Mankrik's wife, leading to my conclusion. Mankrik is a warlock / blade master hybrid. He used some sort of spell, probably involving 60 Quillboar tusks, to implant the thought into your mind. Exhibit D, Mankrik's wife's location. If you locate the so-called beaten corpse, you'll find it in some nondescript, abandoned Tauren hut gathering. How do you, or Mankrik, know that this is the exact hut gathering Mankrik and his wife fought at? Very simple, and it leads to my final speculation. Mankrik, full of fell demon blood and drunk on power, meets his wife, probably a cult member as well. She attempts to dissuade him from the cult and to retire to the countryside for a quiet life. But Mankrik was enraged by her failed persuasion and inside killed her in an enraged frenzy of blood, gore and rage. Mankrik, feeling no remorse, had his underlings take his dead wife to some faraway location and leave her to rot in the hot barren sun. Perhaps Mankrik was known amongst his kin in Crossroads, and the disappearance of his wife would be very strange. So, disguised as a pathetic orc who can't travel from Crossroads to Camp Torajo to go find his wife wouldn't draw any attention. Therefore, his reaction when you turn in the quest, he shows no remorse or feeling whatsoever about his wife's supposed death. Why would Quillboar just suddenly raid a few small huts with little to no importance whatsoever? Maybe Mankrik is an old god disguised as an orc. Maybe we will never know. Maybe. And in response to that very fun post that I'm so glad I found, I now present to you a very special call, as it's time for Calling Countdown. And what you're going to hear now is the podcast debut of a Countdown to Classic original piece of content, Law and Order, Mankrik's Wife Unit. Enjoy, everyone.
In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crime and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories.
Hey, Sarge, I know I'm new to the detective's office and everything because I'm a rookie, but I'm sure glad they paired me up with you. You're a legend. How long have you been in the job again?
Over 19 years.
19 years. Wow, you must have seen and heard a lot. Tell us a little bit more about your experience.
Well, I did patrol when I first hired on the department, just like most people do. And patrol, if like some people don't know, it's kind of like that show Cops, where you ride around, you answer a 911 call that comes in, and you respond to things out in the field. You wear a uniform, all that stuff. And then I worked property crimes. I did that for about 9 years of patrol, and I trained some rookie officers for a little bit. And then I worked property crimes for about 5 years, and then I worked robberies for about 3 years. And robberies are basically when you force property off someone at gunpoint or through some sort of threat. You pull a knife on someone, take their purse, pull a gun, take their wallet. And then I've worked in homicide for about 2 years.
Man, you're an absolute legend. That's amazing. I hope to have the experience that you have one day. I can't believe that, the brass sent us out on this job. I mean, come on, man. It's a missing persons report. Isn't this bullshit something for general duties cops? We're fucking homicide. Do you normally get called out before there's even a body?
Not normally. Sometimes the other units are overworked, or they just need help with something like that, or for some reason they suspect there could be more to it. They may ask for our assistance, but we'll just kind of play it by ear and see how it goes.
Sure thing, Sarge. All right, we'll go with your experience level head. All right, is this the guy? Let's pull up here. Hey, g'day, mate.
Loktar.
Are you Mankrik? Sorry, how's it pronounced? Mankrik. What? Oh, Mankrik.
Sug.
Sorry, gotcha, mate. All right. Psst, Sarge, considering his wife's gone missing, what approach would you take here? The soft and gentle approach, or a bit more harsh and accusatory?
I wouldn't be accusatory on a missing person report. They're the one coming to us with the information. There's no reason to be suspicious at this time of anything, and I would probably assume that they're providing us with truthful information. There's no reason to suspect otherwise at this time.
Got it. Soft and gentle. All right, let me take the lead on this one if you don't mind, Sarge. I'll give it a go. All right, so your wife's pissed off and is probably fucking dead given how many pricks try to rip our heads off on the ride over here. So what's the story, Mankrik? How did it happen?
Back off, whelp.
How'd I go, Sarge? Was that soft enough?
You might want to work on your tone a little bit, but yeah.
All right,
yes, you're a rookie, so we'll see how it goes.
I'll try next time. All right, no worries. I'll tell you what, Sarge. It's probably best that you show me. Why don't you take the lead on this one now? Let's say he's given us his story, which is the quest text, and I'll just remind you what that story is. Here's what he just told me, Sarge. He says, "We battled in a small Tauren camp when we were separated. She held 3 of the bristlebacks off by herself, but the odds began to overwhelm us. I led some away only to see her overwhelmed by newcomers. In my rage, I turned to face my enemies, but they brought me down easily with their vast numbers. I awoke to a Tauren druid tending my wounds. He had come across me on the Gold Road as I fell. Please, find some sign of my wife." So, after hearing that, Sarge, what kind of questions would you have for Mankrik at this point? Do you take a statement, and what kind of things would you want to get out of him?
Yeah, we'll take a statement from him. We definitely want to find out what his wife was wearing last. So, I'm assuming that she hasn't changed clothes, that she hasn't been back to the house or anything like that, because he doesn't know where she is. So I would get a good description of what she was wearing last, so we'd know shirt, shoes, whatever she has, whatever color her hair is. If he has a recent photograph of her, that's always helpful as well. We'll have to spread the word out to let people know what area she was seen in last. So if she was last seen in a certain area, we'll want to find out if she knows anyone in that area. She may have a relative or a friend that lives nearby that she went to their location. We may be able to locate her there. And that's pretty much it. There's a couple qualifiers, like if she's over 65 years old or if she's under 10 years old, things like that could make this a critical missing, where we'll use more resources to locate the person, deploying a helicopter, things like that. In this case, I'm assuming that she's fitting all the basic criteria, so there's basically no need to have a huge party of people looking for her. We'll just kind of list her in NCIC, list her as being a missing person. So if any police officer comes across her and runs her for any reason, she'll pop up as a missing person that's that we need to locate.
All right, got it. Well, I reckon this guy's suspicious as fuck, but I'll take your advice, Sarge, and like you said, he came to us with the missing persons report. We'll leave him be. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now, and maybe you and I, like you said, it won't be a big search party. Maybe just you and I will go and sort of chase this one down. But, all right, we'll see you later, Mankrik.
Strength and honor.
Yeah, see you, mate. Yeah, strength and honor, all that. See you later, mate. Where the fuck is this woman? We have looked fucking everywhere in the Barrens for the past 6 hours and nothing. Nada. Bubkiss. Every prick we ask about tells us that, to check Thoughtbot, whatever the fuck that means. Sarge, what do you normally do in situations like this? What kind of resources would you call in? Are we triangulating calls? Are we calling in air assistance? What would you do?
We could triangulate her position if she has her cell phone turned on right now. We could possibly do that. Normally it has to be like a life and death situation. We have to have some reason to believe that she's in imminent danger, and not just, a missing person. Maybe this person's a chronic runaway, things like that. All that stuff needs to be factored in and considered. And you just got to spread the word out and maybe get a couple other people to help assist us at a certain point if we can't locate her timely enough.
Given that Mankrik told us that he last saw her when he was under assault from the Quillboars, and that might be something that would escalate it to a more critical situation, what kind of things would you turn to then? Is there any department in particular you'd be getting on the phone to straight away?
Within the department, we have a missing persons unit that will basically handle this stuff. We probably would deploy the helicopter at a minimum, just to do an overhead flyby in the last area she was seen. Sometimes you have people that are Alzheimer's, have all sorts of things that wander off. They don't go to the most logical places. And if you have children, small children that hide, small children that are lost, they tend to hide because they get scared and they feel safe and hide. So small children can be extremely hard to locate because they will conceal themselves sometimes. So, we would just have the missing persons unit take a look for it and see what they can find, and then get additional elements to help us, additional police officers.
Don't worry about the air assistance, Sarge. I think I've found something over here. Oh boy, yeah, that's her. I found her, Sarge. Let's just say I don't think she's quite ready to go to the prom anytime soon. That's about as dead as it gets. All right, well, look, Sarge, this is my first dead body. Is it true that people evacuate their bowels when they die, or is that a myth?
It's true to an extent. Everything loosens up. Your body consists of muscles, so sometimes you don't look so bad. And then when you get moved, of course, the medical examiner will come out to the location with us. We'll have our evidence people photograph everything the way it is, and then when the medical examiner starts to manipulate the body, move it around, sometimes then the bowels will open, stuff will come sliding out, and the smell gets a whole lot worse real fast.
Yikes! All right, I might let you handle the body at some point, Sarge. But the other thing, I thought orcs were green. Why is she blue? Is that the lividity kicking in?
Yeah. So if you look at her right now, she's kind of blue in the face. That. Blood settles in blood pools. So what that means is she was killed face down. She was face down for a while. The blood began pooling and collecting at the front of her face. And then at some point after she was dead for a significant amount of time, someone rolled her over and moved her. And that's why she's blue in the face and she's face up now, because someone manipulated the body well after she was dead.
Manipulating the body? Sarge, I smell something, something stinks here. All right, well, look, we found the body. We've taken a look at her now. What would you do when you've come across this body and having seen what you've seen? Would you set up a crime scene immediately? Do we get other people in here? Do we get fingerprints, CSI, NCIS, BFA? What do we do?
Yeah, well, we got to determine where she's found it. So if she's found in her home, it's going to be a little different because fingerprints aren't going to, of course her fingerprints should be in her home, things like that. what we'll need to do is get patrol to help us get the crime scene contained. We'll want to basically canvass the neighborhood and the area, look for any witnesses that are nearby, see if anybody saw anything. One of the tricky parts is when you're in a bad neighborhood, people are less likely to help you come forward because they fear retaliation from others around you. So a lot of times you have to be discreet about things, hand out your business card, wait for someone to give you a call back later at the office when they feel like they can talk to you, and their peers won't judge them. And we'll have the evidence people see what they can locate. We'll take pictures of the body. Any sort of injury will be noted. So we'll try to determine cause of death. That'll be determined for sure during the autopsy. But sometimes it's obvious, like if there's a stab wound or a gunshot wound or something.
All right, so from here, let's presume eventually our investigation digs up some suspects. I presume that we'd probably want to start talking to some people. Would that be right?
Yeah, we've got a couple people that, have, for whatever reason, if they come to the forefront as being possible suspects, it could be because of a bunch of too much stuff to get into right now. But let's just say we've developed some suspects. What we'll do is we've got two options. If we can develop enough probable cause, or we're fairly certain that they are the suspect, we can issue an arrest warrant and forcibly force them to talk. Or sometimes we can do a more low-key approach where if we think they're a suspect, we don't have to read them their Miranda rights, which is something we do here in this area. And if they're under arrest, we have to read them the Miranda, which sometimes people freeze up a little bit and they say, hey, I want to talk to my lawyer, and then you don't really get anywhere with them. So a lot of times we'll just bring people in, not under arrest. It's a low-stress interview, and see what information they can provide us and try and lock them into a story. Find out what explanation they have for where they were at the time everything happened, what they were doing. See if they can help prove that they're being truthful. Maybe they have a credit card receipt for where they were eating lunch when this happened or something. Hey, I was down the street, over here. Here's my receipt. Maybe they're on video somewhere. Gives them an alibi. Or other times they can't explain it, and then we can leave them as still probably a potential suspect.
I think we got two people here that I'm going to want to get back to the station to talk to, so let me grab these two. Now, Sarge, you don't mind, we do the whole good cop, bad cop thing. I've always wanted to be bad cop. Do you mind if is that a thing? Does that really happen?
Sometimes. You need to stick to your personality, because police aren't actors. So if you're naturally kind of a jerk, then maybe you play the bad cop role a little bit. But if you're more of a nice person, then you definitely need to stay in the good cop realm, because there's a little bit of truth to that, although it's exaggerated on TV. But you need to do what works for you.
I'll go the bad cop. I'm a little bit of an asshole at times. That's okay. All right, here we go. All right, pal, give it up. Where were you last night between 8 and 10 p.m.? Don't give me that bullshit. Sarge, he's playing the old I don't speak the language card. You don't happen to speak Zebra, do you, Sarge?
No, we'll have to get a translator in here.
That's annoying. All right, here's the translator. Now, Sarge, you're the good cop. What would you say to him? What one question, what line of thought would you want to be getting at first here?
I would just explain to him that we need to be thorough in our investigation, that just because we're talking to them doesn't necessarily mean that they did anything wrong, that if something happened to their loved one, that they would want the police to be as thorough as possible, and that their name came up during the investigation. So that's why we're talking to them, and we just need to find out where they were when all this stuff happened and what they were doing.
Sarge, are you sure this translator's on the up and up? He keeps saying something about Chuck Norris. Anyway, I'll write that down as a potential suspect. Chuck Norris. All right, well, we tried that. We didn't get anywhere with that guy. Let's try this next guy over here. All right, you sick, deranged freak. Admit that you cut that poor orc's throat from ear to ear. She did nothing to you, but you did it because you liked it, didn't you, punk? Damn, stonewalled again. Now, Sarge, would you rough him up a little bit here, or do they only do that in the movies? That's
in the movies. We'll get our any confession we get will be thrown out if we do that, and we may lose our jobs over stuff like that. So, if you think he cut her, we can do some of the forensic stuff. Maybe we can we can check his hands for blood. We'll photograph his hands. A lot of times when people stab and cut other people, they will end up getting small cuts on their own hands. So, depending on how long ago this happened, even if he's not actively bleeding anymore, he may still have some small cuts or abrasions on his hands that we can see that are look like they're from a knife. If they're smooth and not all torn up and huge gashes, then they may be cuts that he sustained. So let's check this guy's hands and think that if he cut this woman, and photograph everything, and we'll have a good record that way of whether he did or didn't have injuries to his hands, because that's stuff that'll change and heal over time before it goes to court.
Sarge, I just figured something out. This whole time we've been looking down the wrong avenues. We should go back to where my hunch was. Let's go back and look into the dodgy, bloody husband. All right, Mankrik, we found your wife, and bad news, buddy. She got a little bit bored of living, if you catch my drift. Get it? Bored? Bored like Quillbores?
That's not funny.
That was a good one, right, Sarge? Right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. You should quit your day job and become a comedian.
Yeah, look, maybe the puns come with experience. Anyway, look, Mankrik, she's dead. What do you have to say about that?
Blood and thunder.
Wait, what was that about blood?
Blood
Did you hear that, Sarge? What did you say, Mankrik?
and thunder.
Blood and thunder? Mate, you don't seem too beat up over finding out that your wife is dead. Sarge, what questions would you have at this point when you think you've got a prime suspect feeling a little bit of heat or saying some pretty fucked up stuff?
We definitely need to make sure that we record everything that he's saying, because we don't want to let him change his story later on. Or if he does change his story, it's going to look suspicious. And we also need to find out what was going on between him and his wife at the time, what their relationship was like. Maybe there was an affair going on. Maybe there's a history of family violence at the house. We need to check all the old calls at their address, see if police have responded before, and if there's any sort of pattern of anything. Because of cell phones and stuff, there's a lot of useful information to get from cell phones. Maybe she contacted someone. Maybe he had told someone that he was thinking about doing something. We can even check his social media site. Sometimes people brag about stuff in weird ways, and they end up putting stuff on social media where it's kind of a little bit cryptic, but if you know exactly what's going on, then it makes a little bit more sense. So we need to probably focus our investigation more on this person based on their reaction is not normal.
All right, I love it. Let's charge this prick, and you know what? Let's drag his ass to court.
Will you stop touching me?
All right, so, Mr. Riv, you're a sergeant of the Orgrimmar Police Department, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were the investigating officer of this matter, is that correct?
Yes, and I was training a new recruit. This happened. Yes.
Oh yeah, how'd he go?
He had some remedial training.
Okay. All right, so you compiled the brief of evidence in this matter, and you ended up grabbing some forensic evidence in regards to the markings on the body that were found at the crime scene. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, I believe the findings were that a sword was used, as there were some markings etched into the armour of the deceased. Can you tell the court a little bit more about what the expert findings were in relation to that evidence?
Yeah, so certain weapons are unique, even if they look the same on kind of a microscopic level or if you have a lot of magnification. Just like with bullets, every gun kind of leaves its own lands and grooves in a cartridge case. So you can link up a bullet to a particular gun. Well, if you have a handcrafted sword, you're going to have small details that are minute. You may not even notice them with the naked eye, but under magnification you can see things like that where there's unique marks, and if you can match that up to the wounds, which in this case everything matched up. The wounds did match up, the lacerations to some of the imperfections in the sword matched up with some of the cuts on her body and where the cut was on her. You can basically say that we know his sword was used to kill this person.
And is it right that the ballistics expert came to a conclusion that it was a 99.4% chance that the etchings found on the body were the same found in the sword held by the defendant at the time that he was come across by police?
Yes, and as the detective in the case, we present all the evidence. The ballistics, the person that actually did the ballistics, they will have to testify about their own expertise and how they came to the conclusions that they came to. I just basically compile everything together and present it as a whole package, and I could say that the all the evidence was consistent that it was his sword.
I'm so glad you know your rules of evidence, Sergeant Riv, and you've called me out on you've objected to my own questions from the witness box, which is fantastic. I'm glad you're all over it. But let's pretend we're skirting the rules a little bit here. But okay, now what I'm going to do is let's say Mankrik's in the box now. Now, Mr. Mankrik, the prosecution suggests that you weren't quite getting along with your wife in the lead up to her death. Would that be right?
Are you challenging me?
She'd started visiting Bob the Quillbore down the road just a little too often for your liking, hadn't she?
You dispute my honor?
Mr. Mankrik, let's be honest here, and I remind you that you are under oath, sir. You knew she was having an affair, and so you offed her. You killed her. You made sure that she zugged her last zug, didn't you?
Zug.
Look at him, crying like a baby in the box. If that's not guilt, I don't know what is, Your Honour. Sarge, it looks like we did it. Well done. Do you think I've got any promise in the force from here on?
I think this is the start of a budding career for you. You're going to do well for yourself. You've really improved in the time we worked this case from start to finish.
Gee, thanks, Sarge. I appreciate that. All right, Sarge. Well, thanks so much for letting me ride along with you on this job. I really appreciate it. You've been great in your answers. I've learnt a lot. Hope to work with you on the next job.
All right, sounds good.
And that's been Calling Countdown, everyone, and I really do hope you enjoyed that little bit of chaos that I decided to come up with. And again, big thanks to listener Riv for putting up with my mayhem during that call. He did that without sound effects, and I dropped them in later, so please appreciate how weird that would have sounded to him at the time. And again, a really big thank you to you, Riv. But now it's time for Tidbits. With Tidbits, I bring you a few little-known pieces of information about the content that we've just discussed. So here's just a couple of quick things that I didn't know about the Barrens. So, although the Barrens is actually said to be the home to Black Dragonkin, no dragons appear in this zone in-game whatsoever. Next, in Warcraft 3, a number of intelligent races occupied the Barrens that were actually absent in World of Warcraft. They were the aforementioned Black Dragons, Bronze Dragons, Murlocs, and Wildkin. Next, Mankrik's wife, Olgra, is one of the characters featured in Blizzard Outcast's Vengeance of the Vanquished, the fighting game that was quote-unquote announced as part of a 2014 April Fool's joke. Her description read, "Uniquely innocuous, Olgra's ability to hide in plain sight is unmatched. She confuses friends and enemies alike with an elusive health bar and difficult-to-read maneuvers. Her abilities are Last Place You Look, Barrens Backdrop, and One with the Land. And her blood type is apparently O+. And that's been Tidbits, everyone, and that's the show for the day. However, just before I let you go, I just want to quickly shout out to the members of the Countdown Council. Shout out to Flozy B, Palfurus, Permadrunk Rarebit, Romani, The Anton, Wilson Ma, and Valaco. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic simply would not be the same without your support. Also, a big thank you to supporters Bossman764, Hurlbert, Good Kisser, Myrtlebanks, Purgatos81, and Zudamos as always. Next, you'll hear from the show on Monday, where I'll bring you a really fun chat all about hunters. And if you're hearing this today, I'm actually recording that chat live on stream over at Twitch, if you can find me at Countdown to Classic, where I'll be chatting to Timecop and Razia, two very well-known, very good vanilla hunters, and we'll be chatting everything hunters in general. So if you're listening to this on the day it's released, being August 31st, then please do tune in from about 7 o'clock tonight. I'll be doing about a 4-hour stream, and we're going to take a bunch of calls, actually, including a very, very special one that I'll tell you all about on stream, which I'm actually quite excited for. It's a bit of a reuniting, if you will, which I'm very much so looking forward to. So please do tune into the stream. But outside of that, I'll see you Monday, everyone, on the show, and have a great weekend.